Yay. Good morning. Good morning. I figured after that poor job of singing, they wouldn't be like, hey, get that guy out of here. Hey, if you can't have a good time with it, don't do it.
Exactly. That's right.
That's right. Hey, we're only talking about our eternal souls. I mean, that's not even serious business, right? Of course. That's where you go straight back. All right, if you hadn't noticed me standing up here, notice that it's me that's standing here. You still have a chance to run. Look at that, he's gone. He's out of here. No other takers? That means you're stuck with me. Good morning, you fine folks. How are y'all? Well, that was pitiful. Good morning, folks. How are y'all? There it is. Somebody's awake. All right, Keith's here. Okay. Well, I'm going to fill in for Pat, obviously, because I'm not Pat. It's very obvious. We're going to talk about the blessed R's and the blessed B's this morning. Keep it nice, keep it light. I'm not going to beat on y'all this morning. Who wants to open us up this morning? How about Brother Calfee? Thank you, my good friend. All right, so Matthew, that's the first book in the New Testament. Matthew chapter 5, that's the fifth book in Matthew. In verse 1, that's the first verse in the fifth chapter of the first book of the New Testament. It's pretty near the start of all of the new stuff. We've got Jesus. He's still alive at this point, right? Okay. Just making sure. I didn't know if I needed to do a quick history lesson. All right, so we've got Jesus, and he's sitting up on this mountain, or a big hill, or however you want to translate that. And he's got a pretty good mess of folks standing around with him. So seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and he sat down, and his disciples came to him. And he opened his mouth, and he taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are, I got it marked out there. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So the Beatitudes, the things that you should be, the attitudes that you should be having all the time. Why? And now you guys know that I'm not going to take any of that, well, because it's how you get to heaven answers. Why? Why does he use these things specifically? Why does he talk about a peacemaker? Why does he talk about the meek? Why does he talk about the mournful? Why does he talk about those who hunger and thirst for righteousness? Why does he say these things? Do what, Mama? He is, in fact, laying the groundwork. But look at these as a whole. It describes a Christian, or it describes rather what a Christian should be. Should attain. Where they should be going. But let's take it outside of the brotherhood there for a second. Blessed are those folks. Who does that encompass? When you think on the grand scheme, the world stage, who do these tags, pronouns, identifiers, who do these things encompass? They should encompass Christians, but we're not talking about in the brotherhood. I want you to step outside. I want you to step outside. God-fearing. I want you to step outside. Everyone. These things encompass the totality of the human existence. Every person, Christian, non-Christian, can be mournful and is mournful. In what culture do you know of that they're happy that their mother died? In what culture do they not mourn their loved ones? In what culture do you not find meekness? In what culture do you not find people who seek, who hunger and thirst for righteousness? Why are there so many idols and so many gods and so many diverse forms of worship? And why do those things exist? Because inborn in us from the very beginning of creation, God gave us free will. And in that free will is also inborn the desire to worship. That's why you have the sun god and you have the water god, the wind god. These attitudes encompass the entirety of the human experience. Are you following me now? Are you with me? Blessed are those who do these things, for they shall be filled. He's sitting down and he's starting to teach these people. Now remember, this is almost the very beginning of the ministry of Jesus. This wasn't like, oh, and then tomorrow he was crucified. This is the very beginning. He's just coming out and saying to folks, hey, good morning, here I am. I'm this Jesus dude. Right?
Well, they've been here in the scribes and Pharisees and the high priests and so forth, with all the rules and regulations.
Mm-hmm. They had, and he's there to simplify the problem. All right. And then after the Beatitudes, you're going to say, well, you have heard that it was said, but I tell you. Right? But who's sitting at the foot of this mountain listening to him? Is it just his disciples and Jews? No. No, it's folks who have no idea. There's Greeks and Gentiles and all this that have no idea what the Pharisees said, nor do they really care that much, right? What the Pharisees had to say, because the Greeks, they had all of their gods, these mighty gods. I mean, Mount Olympus, and they had Zeus and Athena and Aphrodite and Mars, and they didn't, But what did they have? They hungered and thirsted for righteousness. Because they were devout followers of Zeus and Athena and Mars and Aphrodite and all those other ones. There's like 150 million of them. I don't know them all.
In essence, they were all looking for something, but they didn't know what they were looking for.
Every single one of those people were looking for the same thing that the Jews were looking for and that the disciples were looking for. And Jesus was sitting down, and at the very beginning of this Sermon on the Mount, he tells them, you Greek fellow over there who worships Kronos, the god of time, you hunger and thirst for righteousness. Guess what? Keep listening. You will be filled. This Sermon on the Mount was not preached to the Church of Christ in Burnett, Texas on Vanderveer Street. It wasn't for Christians, because at that time, did Christians even exist? No, they did not. So this, while it encompasses completely what a Christian should be, there were no Christians to be at the time, nor were there going to be that afternoon either. There weren't going to be Christians that afternoon. In fact, there weren't going to be Christians until a few years later. So for us to keep the mindset that the Sermon on the Mount was about Christians isn't actually accurate, is it? It's not. The Sermon on the Mount was about those who wanted to know why they existed on the face of this earth. They wanted to know how they should exist on the face of this earth. Just like every single pumping heart that has been, is, or will be wants to know, what am I doing here? Why am I here? What's my purpose here? Our purpose here, what Jesus is going to go through the Sermon on the Mount and tell us is, you're here to worship me, to get from here back home. Every one of you is lost, not only spiritually, but mentally. You don't know what your purpose on this earth is here. Let me tell you. So, with that mindset, all right, the mindset of we're not talking about Christians in 2023, 2023. Let's talk about the Beatitudes, okay? So, the poor in spirit. Somebody define poor in spirit. Now, also keep in mind, we're not using, well, we can absolutely use the Christian's definition. But when you give your definition of poor in spirit, think outside just the Christian realm. Poor in spirit. I'm having trouble hearing you.
Humble.
Humble. Humble. That's a good piece of it. That's a good piece of it. Humility. Because in order to know that your spirit is not complete and fulfilled, you have to have the humility of self to know that you're not good enough on your own. Absolutely. Somebody give me another piece. Depression. Absolutely. Absolutely. Your deficit. Your deficit of spirit. Knowing that you're not complete. And not knowing exactly what that piece is that you need, but knowing that it's out there missing somewhere that needs to be found. What'd you say, Kelvin? Worry. All right, now look, I got a microphone. Y'all don't. Y'all yell at me. I can't hear. What? Worry, absolutely. In fact, later on in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus goes on to speak specifically about worry and how useful that is to you. And at the end of the day, we all know worry equals misery and zero usefulness to my life. It doesn't help me very much. It doesn't help you very much. And it doesn't help anybody very much to worry past a certain point. So poor in spirit, we have humility, we have a depression or a deficit. What else is encompassed in being poor in spirit? There's obviously an educational value that you can attach to that. I don't know, therefore I need to be educated about. So what kind of people does that look like? Just about everyone. I don't know exactly. I know that came from this direction, but just about everybody. Because without a feeling of fulfillment or completion, you can't really be that happy. I mean, you can definitely have moments of levity in life without, being Christian or having your soul complete, but that long-lasting security, that you can feel that, man, if I get smacked by a bus, if I die of old age or disease or accident, I'm okay. that security, that peace that comes from knowing that you are complete, fulfilled, and destined, it's hard to have. And I would be willing to say, I don't know if y'all remember me coming way over here as me giving my opinion, not biblical something. So this is not a biblical something. This is my just opinion. It is based off of, but I don't think that it actually is possible to be that secure in yourself without that. You can have I believe in science, and science fulfills me, and that's cool. But science can't tell you what happens to you after you die, can they? They can't tell you how you really came to be here. They can, we theorize. I know. So that fulfillment, I just don't think you can have it without it. So blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, that seems like a pretty blanket statement. So does that mean those who are looking but not real hard, theirs is the kingdom of heaven? So if you're poor in spirit, you're going to go to heaven, right? That's what Jesus said. That's what that means. Yes or no? No. Just because I'm depressed because I don't know my purpose in life doesn't mean, oh, poor Chad, he's not sure what he's going to do with the next 30 years of his life. Oh, he can just go to heaven. No, that's not really what that means. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Is blessed are those who are looking, actively seeking, finding, and obeying. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That's what it exists for. For those who wish to find their way back to me, I have set up this place that is for them. William searched for the kingdom of heaven. He found the kingdom of heaven. He obeyed the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, it is his. I searched for the kingdom of heaven. I found the kingdom of heaven. I obeyed. Therefore, it is mine. We are joint heirs. I wish you could find that somewhere in Scripture, right? Joint heirs with Christ. Ooh, oh, you can. Blessed are those who mourn. Well, that one should be fairly easy. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. God is the God of what? Love. 2 Corinthians. Think 2 Corinthians. God is the God of... All right, go to 2 Corinthians. It's after 1 Corinthians. Let's see if I can find it in here. Ah, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3. Do y'all's Bibles have the little headings above the little sections of verses? Yeah? All right, God is the God of all comfort. Blessed are those who mourn, for you shall be comforted. Now let's take a second here and just look at 2 Corinthians. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies, the God of all comfort, who comforts us in our affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction, with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. For as we share abundantly in Christ's sufferings, so through Christ we share abundantly in comfort too. If we are afflicted, it is for your comfort and salvation. If we are comforted, it is for your comfort which you experience when you patiently endure the same suffering that we suffer. Our hope for you is unshaken, for we know that you share in our suffering, you also will share in our comfort. For we do not want you to be ignorant, brothers, of the affliction we experienced in Asia, for we were so utterly burdened beyond our strength that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death, but that was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. He delivered us from such deadly peril, and He will deliver us. On Him we have set our hope, and that He will deliver us again. You also must help us by prayer, so that many great goodness gracious, so that many will give thanks on our behalf for the blessing granted us through the prayers of many. So God is the God of all comfort. Now, specifically, 2 Corinthians, this area specifically is talking about the apostles, not apostles, the apostles. In that, the apostles included us. Do you understand? You understand what I'm talking about? The difference, like on Pentecost, when the winds like a hurricane and the tongues of fire fell, that was for the apostles. And I know that that's true because I am a saved Christian who has been baptized and I cannot speak in tongues. Therefore, there are things that are for the apostles and things that are for the rest of us. Right? Now, this is talking specifically about the apostles. But in it, the apostles included us, making us the same in reception of this, right? The God of all comfort. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. What does that mean? Does that mean God's going to swing down from the rafters and go, zap, you're happy now? No. If that was the case, there would be no suffering amongst the brotherhood. And guess what? There is suffering amongst the brotherhood. There is suffering amongst the brotherhood that we will hopefully never experience. We have never had a Roman emperor throw us into an arena and set lions loose to see which one could last the longest. We have not had whole cities set on fire by emperors and blamed upon us. Yeah, well, yeah, you're right, yet. It could very well happen. We have not had people call us cannibals. I can't remember the last time somebody called me a cannibal because I ate the body of Christ. You know, I can't remember the last time I had to worship in a cave because if I was to worship openly, somebody would come along with a club or a sword and kill me. You know, there's some uncomfortable things about Christianity that we have yet to experience and hopefully never do, but others have. In fact, the apostles here, seems as though they were having a great deal of discomfort in Asia. And the God of all comfort comforted them. He did, in fact, deliver them from that in that time, in that case. But does each and every one of us in this room have our own suffering that we are going through? Our own uncomfortable things that are happening to us that God hasn't just magically swooped down from the rafters and fixed? I know I do. Recently divorced, learning how to be a single father, it's very uncomfortable. And it's shameful and it's hurtful and by gosh, but good Lord hadn't swung down from the rafters and fixed it. So what does it mean when Jesus said, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted?
He's talking about a later time.
At a later time?
I think he's talking about like when you come to meet him.
When you come,
That at that point in time, all those questions will be answered and you'll be comforted then. It's a glimpse to the future, a hope. It's a hope. It's to give you hope.
It is a hope. And you are right. We will, on the great day of judgment, we, those of us who are in the brotherhood, will be comforted.
I think it's accepting God's will.
That's what I was looking for. Accepting the fact that it may not be God's will right now for me to be comfortable, but I have comfort knowing that it's only temporary. It may last my entire life until the day that I pass away or the good Lord comes back. But I know, just like with the poor in spirit, I know that following Jesus, obeying Jesus, guarantees I am forgiven. What you got, Mama?
I think what he said and what she said go together, because it is the
Perfectly.
will of God, but you are able to submit to the will of God because you know ultimately where you're going to end. So you are comforted in the end, and knowing that comforts you to submit to the will of God.
And you're comforted in the middle too, because that's right. That's exactly right.
Matthew 11, 28 through 30.
Now, don't you be jumping ahead, Kelvin. Go ahead, but read it loud enough for everybody to hear.
Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
You'll find rest for your what? Your body? You'll find rest for your bank account? You'll find rest for your achy joints. You'll find rest for your friend who's going through a difficult time. You'll find rest for some other form of ailment in this world. No. You'll find rest for your soul. Jesus in the parable on the Sermon on the Mount, when he says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted," he's not talking about their body. He's not saying, "I'm going to give you soft, cushy sandals and fluffy pillows." I'm going to save your soul so that you can go through this life knowing that no matter what. In fact, I feel like there was an apostle who said something along these lines, that I've learned to be content in all things because my soul is secure. I don't have to worry about those who have passed away in the brotherhood because they're happy. They're good. They are no longer experiencing this thing that we call the human experience, that at times, at the best of times, is bearable, at the worst of times is awful. There are some awful things in this world. And we mourn for those who have to experience them. We mourn for ourselves when we have to experience them. But because our souls are, in fact, secure through Jesus Christ, I'm okay. What you got, Mom?
I'm comforted knowing that God is in control, and He is going to do what's best for me, whether I see it that way or not.
He's going to do what's best for your soul.
Well, and best for me too, I believe.
I'm going to give an unpopular biblical opinion. I'm going to come about 3/4 of the way this direction. Okay? That's about half. There we go. From my reading and understanding of the New Testament, the Old Testament, I do not find a lot of evidence for the idea that God is super interested in your well-being. I find all of the evidence, every single shred of the evidence, that God is concerned with your soul. If God was super concerned with our well-being, He would have found a different way to get us back to Him than literally sacrificing the life of a human being. He would have taken the thorn out of the side. He would have made sure that when you become a Christian, you have physical comfort, and that when you become a Christian, there would be no physical sickness or suffering. If His drive to complete His will was to ensure our well-being physically, there would be things done much differently. Now, I also am wrong sometimes, so keep that in mind. That's why I came mostly this direction. Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking that, but I think it's in cases, right? Like, to the point of if God wants to use you in certain ways, I think He could most certainly be concerned about your physical well-being to meet those
To meet the need of His will.
Correct.
Absolutely.
But in other cases, He has people that perhaps
Your suffering is a benefit to His will.
correct. So
And I will buy that. I'll buy that whole farm. Our well-being isn't necessarily the issue. It's how He chooses to use our well-being or non-well-being to affect His will upon those around us. Like, here's a good example, right? Most of y'all know me, have known me most of my life, if not all of it. I'm a little bit of a cripple at an early age. I got a real bad back, and it hurts a lot every day. And there is nothing that can physically be done about it. It is just what I'm going to live with until I lose the use of my legs, and then I die. Okay? If God was super worried about my well-being, He would take that away from me. And I know because I've prayed many times for it to not hurt as bad, because there is a lot of things in this life that I would like to do that are extremely limited by the fact that 12 spinal fusions keep you from climbing Mount Everest. Of course, so does eating as much as I do. But that's beside the point. Shh. I said beside the point. And I've prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed about that to go away or to be less. And God so far has said, that particular portion of my well-being is not necessary to impose His will upon those around us. I'm just as saved and going to the same heaven with this busted backbone as I would be if I had a real good one. So, the point of the story, the moral of the story, God's will for us is going to be much more of a concern to Him than our well-being in general.
And each of us have.
You interrupted.
Okay.
Yes?
He never promised us a rose garden.
Well, that was actually Patsy Cline who never promised us a rose garden.
As a matter of fact, we are to rejoice in our tribulation. Through those
Consider it all
tribulations
joy.
and troubles that we grow, He tests us. So where would we be if everything was perfect?
I don't know. I ain't experienced it. But yeah, your point is exactly that. The Christian experience is one of tribulation, of torment and toil and hard, not easy. Because if it was easy, then everybody would do it. Exactly. So, all right, Kelvin.
This is sort of the reason I like Ecclesiastes 5.
Ecclesiastes, the whole thing is great.
18 through the end of the chapter there, 20, and it's talking about, now realize that it is good and proper for a man to eat and drink,
Yeah.
and to find satisfaction in the toilsome labor under the sun, that few days of life that God has given you. So whatever we are doing in life, it's what we do.
You better perk up and be happy about it, because it's what you get.
This is His lot.
That's right.
Moreover, when God gives any man wealth and possessions and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot and be happy in his work, this is a gift of God. And then its last one, he seldom reflects on the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with gladness of heart. So I read these verses a lot and think about how God has blessed me, and don't complain, suck it up, do what you're supposed to.
But that's not comfortable. That's not comfortable, Kelvin.
But it's what is each of us facing.
Exactly. And that is the essence of the Christian experience, is to live your life. It may not be fun, but live your life in such a manner that you get to go back home. And if you live your life in such a manner that you get to go back home, you can have comfort, you can have peace, you can have happiness, you can have safety, knowing, now, none of those things are about physicalness. They're about the soul, right? You can have those things knowing that you get to go back home, where you're not going to be toiling under the sun, you're not going to be fighting in wars, you're not going to be battling cancer, you're not going to be worrying about getting ran over by a drunk driver, you're not, because all we have to do once we get to heaven is just live in the glory of God. And that honestly sounds way better than what I'm doing right now. Okay. Blessed are the meek. Well, does anybody else have anything else they want to talk about with the mourning, the mournful, and the poor in spirit before we move on to the meek? Because I think meek might be the last one we get to do today. We did not get very far into these, did we? I got them a little long-winded. I mean, you're right, but yeah. All right. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Who are the meek? Does meek mean weak? I know everybody who's ever stood at a podium has said, "Oh, meek doesn't mean weak," but it's just catchy. Controlled strength, and that is the most common definition. Blessed are those who have strength under control. Samson, he was super strong, and he had strength under control until he asked God, "Hey, let me tear this thing down," and then that control was gone, and he yanked her down. Blessed are the meek. What does it mean to be the meek? We as Christians, we live in a certain way. We know that we have great strength by obeying the will of God. A great strength. Is it a physical strength? No. It's a spiritual strength. I did not, when I was baptized, I did not get Samson-style muscle strength. It just didn't happen. I wasn't made an expert marksman. I wasn't made a expert financial advisor, or any of those things when I was baptized. So we know that it's not strength of the physical realm here that we gain. But what is that strength that we gain? We've talked about it quite a lot. Think about where we've been talking about that strength that you gain, that you have under control. Emotional strength, absolutely. But that strength, knowing there is not a single thing in this world that I cannot conquer. We have been made more than conquerors. That sounds biblical. That strength, there is nothing on the face of this earth that can be, will be, has been, or is ever going to be, this world or any world we may or may not discover, that we cannot overcome through our salvation. There is nothing that can happen to us in a good or bad way that cannot be overcome, and that is not overpowered by salvation. Because no number of good things that can happen to you on the face of the earth outside of Christ has any effect or bearing on your eternal soul. So, that meekness is the strength of knowing that nothing can happen that can separate me from the love of God. That also sounds biblical, doesn't it? Yes.
Our definition of meek says quiet and gentle.
Again,
The definition of meek that I found says quiet and gentle.
quiet and gentle. That also sounds very biblical, doesn't it? 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 11 is my absolute favorite verse in the entirety of the Bible, other than the ones that, talk about death, burial, and resurrection. Somebody go there and read it out loud. Huh? 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 11. This is one that every one of you should read enough that you can just memorize it, quote it at any time. Ooh, you better say that so much louder.
That you also aspire to lead a quiet life, to mind your own business, and to work with your own hands as we commanded you.
Ooh, quiet and gentle. Just like little sister pointed out. Meekness, doing as you were instructed. The apostles instructed to, mind your own business, worry about your own soul, go to work, raise your children, and go on to heaven.
I think about it, Pete, be rude, him.
Do you think about who?
Pete and be rude, him.
Okay.
They're both gone. But you talk about easygoing people, quiet, gentle, but they were always doing something for someone else. I mean, it was unreal.
There's been lots of good folks come and go.
And they didn't do it to draw attention to themselves.
They did it because it needed to be done.
So it wasn't about looking at
Yeah.
And if you keep reading down there, it says, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders, instead of you not being dependent on them. So, it makes sense, you live a quiet life.
And it all just falls together. If we will express our meekness, we'll have great strength. Because if you live the lives like Kelvin was just talking about, everybody remembers you. You're a great person, of well renown. But were they living this, get me started. hang on just a minute. I got to come over here. All right. TikTok, Facebook, Insta, Snapchats, whatever. All right. It's like the complete opposite of meekness. Now, I don't want to say, it's a tool. It's a tool. It's a tool that can be used for good. It's a tool that can be used for good. I have to keep reminding, it's a tool that can be used for good. It just isn't. It just isn't. Okay? It's the opposite of meekness. Those people are living their lives in such a manner as to say, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. And people are just throwing money at them. And it irritates me greatly because it is the exact opposite. Blessed are those who are meek, for they shall inherit the earth.
It's
the exact opposite.
She would always, nearly every time you visited her, she would go, do you think I'm going to heaven?
It doesn't matter what I think.
I said, B. Ruth, if you don't make it to heaven, none of us are.
Oh, B. Ruth, that was a good lady. But that meekness, that living your life in such a way is that you bring attention to not yourself, because in Thessalonians it talks about that you will be held up by others, for the way that you live your life. But it's not really us that we're trying to hold up, right? Live your life in such a way that others see God in you. And in fact, Jesus says something very similar right here in this very same sermon, doesn't he? That meekness is the most powerful tool that we have in the brotherhood. There's been some really great preachers that can get up there and they do these gospel meetings with great lessons that are full of power and excitement and entertaining. And they're filled with the truth of God's word and they are fantastic. But you know who hears those? Christians. The world doesn't hear that. What the world sees is Sharon Smeichel, Keith Schubert, Tyrell Phelps, Chad Mulhollan, living a life that they go, what makes that guy tick? What is it? It's that peace and safety, that inheritance of the earth, that inheritance of the kingdom of heaven that comes through the fruition of this sermon. I need about 17 weeks to go through this thing with you guys. It comes from that peace and safety of that inheritance of obeying what Jesus lays out right here in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. Okay. I love you guys, but it's time to stop now. Y'all have a good week. That might